goodness.
Episode 23.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh my god, 23 and it's Sam's 23rd birthday. That's wild.
Whoa.
Look
Happy
it up
birthday,
for the
Sam.
birthday Grinch.
But yeah. So today we're going to talk about resistance, realizations, and
are we doing the word I decided, or I don't have another word?
we can do ratchetness.
Okay, ratchetness.
Ratchetness or ratchetness.
What?
Look, my mind tripped over it.
That's fair. Yeah, I was talking last night to my friend Ashton when we were all in the car, and I was talking about realizations. So I was telling him about the unpacked realization I had about nursing, and I was like,
okay, so walk me through that. Yeah, you gave me just a little summary, but I need to know how this happened.
Okay, so basically, I technically am a nurse. I worked as a nurse for 5 years, 4.5 years, something like that. I got laid off with the pandemic, and then after I was off with the pandemic for a while, I realized I didn't really want to go back into nursing, but I felt this really intense resistance to it, which was weird because while I don't want to go back into it per se, I didn't like the idea that I felt so resistant to it, but I couldn't figure it out like what it was. So I was just like, maybe it wasn't like I'm passion or something, so I just kind of let it go. Well, then what happened was that Sam, we were looking at the dentist, and because he had to get a tooth pulled, and he has insurance, he has dental insurance,
right?
It cost $200 to get his tooth removed. Yeah. And half of the tooth was gone. It fell out. It broke off. So like they knew that it was infected. He had to take antibiotics for it. Like, so it was like they knew it needed to go out. And so I was processing the fact that like we had to like push it back. And when I had my tooth, I kept pushing it back because we couldn't like afford to do that. And so then it had me thinking about like healthcare in general. And so that was how it spiraled fast, because I started remembering
that one first thought that you reached that just opens the Pandora's box, and you're like,
the first thing, like when I was talking about that, and I was like, it reminds me of when I was working in neurology. We would have some people that would try to get appointments, but if you didn't have insurance, it was $500 to see our doctor for 15 minutes. Anyway, so I had a big problem with that, but obviously there's nothing I could do about it. So I was remembering different people that like, contacted us, and we had to like turn away or whatever. And then it just hit me where I was thinking about a specific patient that we tried to get in, and we tried to get the company to just kind of waiver them in because of the disease that we were pretty confident they had. And so I sat there and I was like, they're probably dead. And it hit me. And I was just like, oh my God, like there were so many people that we had to turn away that like, where are they at? Next, I was in neurology, people had things going wrong with the mind, like in the brain, in a very like, not like on a very like technical level. There were people that were having brain damage like actively, there's all these different things. And I was just like, oh, that really had me fucked up. So but then I was sitting there and I was like, I was like, nursing kind of feels like you do this thing and everyone tells you you're doing it because you're a good guy for doing it, but then when you walk away, you realize you may be a good guy, but you're a good guy working for the bad guy. So are you really a good guy, or are you a bad guy? And I was like, oh, that's something that inner me is freaking out about. Yep. Because it hasn't decided, what do I feel like, was I a good guy or a bad guy when I was doing that? Because my intentions were always really good, but the things that I was doing in hindsight, when I look back, especially in psych, a lot of guilt in psych. A lot of guilt in psych. Yeah.
I would have thought that was the one you felt the least about.
I wanted that one the most, and the guilt that lies with it is that there were so many patients that I genuinely do not believe were quote unquote crazy, and I was, like forced to give antipsychotics to almost everyone on the unit. So every morning I would go in and they're like, Nurse Saige, all happy pappy before breakfast. They go to breakfast, they come back, I give them all their meds, and within an hour, no one has personality. Everyone's dead. They're all just like sitting there, not there, and they keep them on antipsychotics until they kick them out. I mean, when I went, they put me on an antipsychotic, like when I was in the psych hospital. Everyone gets put on antipsychotics there, and a lot of times, at least around here,
I see the guilt.
Yeah, and so it really hit me where I was just like, dude, how many people did we send home on an antipsychotic when they weren't crazy? They didn't need it.
It happened to Zach.
It was like they were in I was like, the real term was like, they're not in psychosis. If you're not in psychosis, you don't need an antipsychotic. And the problem is, I feel like the medical field, especially around here at least, heavily assumes every person that is in a dark or low state, it needs an antipsychotic, because they know that an antipsychotic makes you robotic. Like if you don't need it, it makes you robotic. You don't feel like a human. Like the times that I was on it, I felt very
That
much
sounds so
like,
scary. I would never want to
yes,
take
it feels
anything
like you
like
have
that.
no, like when I was on it and I didn't need to be on it, it was very much so like there was such a detachment that it was just like I didn't feel like a human, and nothing mattered, because it was just like, well, none of this matters anyway, so why would I do anything
Right.
if I don't care about it? It was like I had the inability to care about things, and when Sam was on it, didn't need to be on it. After a few weeks, that was his thing, where he was just like, he's like, I want to feel happy about this, but I feel nothing. Oof. And he's like, and it's really like hard.
That's what Brittany used to say. She'd feel just like a shell.
Yeah, it's like you don't feel anything, and you don't realize that like emotions are what make us human. It is like a very human thing. So when you can't feel anything, that's just as bad as feeling only bad, in my opinion. Like, what's wrong with me? Yeah, because then you start freaking out. It's very, very weird. If anyone's ever experienced like the feeling, whether it was from medication or just like that's something you deal with in general, like periods, it is a very weird feeling. And so like that was the when I unpacked, that's when I realized, I was like, oh, that's the resistance. That's is that like, yeah, like being a nurse in theory was something I wanted to help people and help people's bodies stay alive.
For what it really was.
Yeah, and it was like anytime the doctors fucked up, we got in trouble. They always blamed the nurses, and that was something I didn't fuck with either. If they gave the patient the wrong medicine, like the wrong dose, it was the nurse's fault, because she should have double checked it with the online. Like she should have double checked with the med book or whatever. But sir, if you prescribed it, I assume that you know more than me. And so that is the like other thing too. Is like I didn't like that. Yeah. And so it was very much like that, where I'm like, not all doctors were like that, but most of the ones that I ever worked with were. Like there was only a few doctors that I worked for that really weren't like that kind of like a ego. I feel like when they're especially in that mode, like because everyone has modes. So when you're at work, you have like your work identity, and like a lot of the doctors and surgeons I worked with, especially when I got into specialized things outside of work, totally different people. But inside of work, a lot of them, it was just like, dude, don't just try to avoid them like the plague. If they need you, just try to get it done as fast as possible, because at work they're a totally different creature, because they're in that headspace. Because it's like it is a lot of responsibility. Like I can't fucking fathom.
You have to. I have that type of headspace that I can like relate to when I have to get like serious situations and just a bunch of work. Because I mean, I used to when I was 20 years old, I literally signed an office lease and ran a business with the Cutco. So you know, it taught me a lot. But I can also still always pull that.
Yeah, that's like, fair.
Immediate professionalism and also like manage, delegate easily. I think I let that carry over too much into my life though.
That was my issue, was that it was my life. I didn't have a differentiation between work me and outside of me.
Yeah.
So like obviously like I had Kirsten was running things a lot of the times in my normal life, but she only was supposed to run certain things. Like she was like supposed to be like the academic one and then the nurse, but there never was an off mode. Like in normal life, I might have been online like letting the alters like have identities, but in real life it was always the work person. So I couldn't differentiate. I couldn't stop being serious, because I'm the one that's serious and takes care of things. I can't do that. So it was always a weird.
Right. Yeah, I was stuck in that for a while, and then like when I realized, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, no, bye. Yeah. And so that's when the resistance came up, and I was like, I'm not taking care of anybody. Like I'm, you know, whatever. And then like I've started to bring the balance back recently. When I realized that resistance, I was like, all right. Yeah, that's cool. Another bit of resistance that you and I, you know, share in similarities, pushing people to heal.
Kumbaya, you know what I mean? When you love somebody, you hate to see them suffer.
You hate to see them hurt.
But it's a weird like ego thing, because your higher self knows that they're on their journey and there's something we can do to like speed it up. But then you have your ego self, and like, you know how like I feel like the ego is like, you know, it's like yin yang. You got two sides of it. So you got one side of the ego that's like, oh my God, I love them so much. I don't want them to suffer. I want them to be happy. And then you have the other side of your ego that's like, bro, they need to heal faster because look at all the shit, extra shit they're making both of us go through because they're not healing in time. And that's so fucking annoying because like one of the,
it's selfish.
Yes,
the ego is selfish.
And for the longest time, the reason why I had such a problem, like where I was trying to push healing on so many people, was because I only acknowledged that lighter side. That side was, it's because I love you and I want you to feel better.
And that's what my mom did.
Yeah,
my
and it was like,
life.
You have to acknowledge the part that's like, and you know what, it makes me hella uncomfortable to be around you when you're unhealed because it's sometimes it's triggering and I don't want to have to deal with it because I worked really hard to get out of that state.
Right.
But you have to admit that that is a part that's in there because it's okay.
Right.
There's going to be duality. You're going to feel things. And you, just because you feel something or you think something doesn't mean that's you.
Right.
And that's like a big thing. I feel like people feel bad to admit when they're having selfish thoughts or selfish feelings or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, that's what I'm feeling. And it's probably because of some pattern that I've been running and didn't realize. But this is what I'm feeling. That's okay. This tells me what I'm feeling, and what I'm thinking tells me what I need to work on if it doesn't resonate with me.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, I don't know. It just, when you finally have the realization you've been doing that, you're like, the ick.
It gives me the ick because it reminds me of the Christians that push religion, and I'm like, ew.
You told me straight to my face last week. You were like, because you are being like one of those Christians, and I was just like,
you're like, she said this. I'm like, yeah, this unfortunately, because I had the same realization at one point where I realized I was trying to show my particular perspectives and traditions and things, and I was just like, but I was like, no, what I mean is like it worked for me, so I wanted to help you. And I'm like, that's what like Christians are doing too. That's what all religions are trying to do. They're trying. It's like they're just doing it the wrong way. And that's where that song that's on the Spiritual Vibes playlist. I let life be their own teacher. Me, everyone. That's when I say that to myself so much now because when I see someone just continually like fucking up, I'm like, let life be their teacher. Mm-hmm. I'm like, and then. And then the song from Flume plays in my head. Say nothing. Say nothing. So like I'll have that play and then that play, and I'm like, cool. The universe speaks to me in my mind through like songs and shit and affirmation. I don't know. It's funny, but 100%. I totally get that. And then the second you let the resistance go and you accept and let them just do their thing, exactly what you were trying to get them to do starts happening. And it's literally just the energy of the universe, and that's what's so frustrating. It's like if you look at it on a very like scientific breakdown way. This is my fault. I started talking about nursing right off the bat, so I know who's present. But on a very energy way. If you're pushing all this energy for someone or to heal, right? So the second you stop, the energy goes, wait, now there's a gap. Wait, I have to go meet you. That's all it is. It's like, bro, just let go because you're the reason it's not coming back because it has to. It's a flow. It's waves. Exactly. And so it's like the second you stop pushing it, it's like you're coming at it like a tidal wave, pushing it, it's like, pushing it. And then when that wave receives, bye. It's like whenever I like to imagine like two oceans like meeting and they have their two waves, and then it's like when we meet, then they go back and they're like, they just keep doing. But if one of them kept pushing, it would be one ocean. Yep, that's it. A little back and forth. That's it. That's the end of the podcast. That's it. Yep. Oh man. So you have the series of unfortunate events. Well, the series of resistance, and then the realization, and then you realize the ratchetness. Yeah. The ratchetness came before it all, but you don't realize it till the end. I feel like it's an ego thing, really, because it's very maturing for the ego. Yep. Yeah. It's one of those things like you start having, things come up and you're like, wow, I think this means this. Like there was a point where I remember being like, the first realization was maybe they're interpreting what I'm saying wrong. Then it continued further. Maybe I'm wording this wrong. Maybe they think I have an attitude. maybe I had an attitude. And then at one point I said, damn, maybe I was being a bitch. And it's like, it takes a whole, you got to really break it down because you really sit on it. And then eventually you're like, well, but if you don't ever sit on it, you stop at that first realization, you never actually have the breakthrough of the ratchetness. Because I'm telling you, if you didn't feel ratchetness forever you realized, probably
you're
wasn't
not
there.
fully having
Probably wasn't
the
there.
realization yet.
Because when you heal from something like that, you look back at it and you're like, especially when it's when you were a negative trait of yours, like if you were being like, you know, if you had someone that was like having an attitude with people like all the time, when you realize that and you stop, you look back at that and you go, oh my God,
the remorse.
Yes, you're like, I feel so bad that I couldn't do that. Blah, blah, blah. So it's like if you don't look back, then there's probably still something to unpack there.
Right. Because I've had it where like, you know, I had the level of realization. I'm like, okay, that's what happened. But like there were other things that I still needed to figure out to where it didn't fully click. And then the other morning I like finally felt all of the remorse and I was like,
yeah. You're like, yeah, that was shit.
And I'm not kidding you. Yesterday, I sent Sam a video. I was listening to Asking Alexandria. I used to listen to them in high school, screamo metal. I sent him a video. It was like, oh my fucking God. And the song was just relatable. Like, and I don't usually turn my volume in my car above like 25, 28 sometimes if I'm really feeling, you know, like bold. Because you have a lot of like speakers. Yeah. I have fucking 2 12s in my trunk. So you're like, I don't know what that means. But for the people that know speakers, I got 2 Sundown 12s with 1,000 watt amp. Or no, 2,000 watt amp. And they kick. So yesterday I was riding around with both windows down and my volume was on 38. And I was listening to nothing but screamo. Normally I don't like the wind stimulating my hair all over my face and stuff like that, but yesterday I was just like, I'm so numb, I need everything. There's
only a few times I like having the windows down whenever I'm in the car. It's either one because I'm trying to like do deep breaths of like fresh air or some shit, or panicking. It's because this is probably niche, but I will pretend that I'm in a movie or something. And then I'll pretend that I'm a different person. So I'll be like, oh, imagine like you're someone who has a van and they're like super, super hippie and they don't have AC and you have the windows rolled down and you're listening to Rod Stewart and you're just jamming in the car. And I'll just
I think that's super niche too.
And I'll just imagine what it would be like to be that person. That is one that stuck with me since high school. There was this girl, Mandy. I don't remember her last name. Mandy, out there somewhere, who inspired that role because she had a van. It had AC though, and she didn't live in it. But she was so cute, and she was very much like hippie. And when she drove me home one day, she was playing Rod Stewart with the windows down. In hindsight, I probably had a crush on her, and I didn't realize. In hindsight, that's probably what that was. Exactly what that was. But ever since then, I just love like it's so fun.
I love looking back and realizing your crushes when you just
because I think she was dating my cousin at the time, which is probably why I was like I didn't recognize that I had a crush on her. Yeah, because I didn't really know her. It was just like you know, when you meet someone, you're like, oh my God, like she was like just so like hippie and like happy and totally a stoner in hindsight.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At the time, I did not think that, but I was ignorant. 100%. She had like a mullet, so yeah. Really, kind of like it was like a long shaggy, but it was like definitely short in front. I don't even have photographic memory in my brain full of those details.
You was in love with her. You saw her and you were like,
my brain wrote that like a fucking novel. It was like I could have that. I could literally sit down and write out that drive home and as like a short story right now and have it full detailed, thousands of words, like 100%. Any hooter holler.
That's talent, bro. That's impressive.
I can write
my
out
brain cannot do that. So.
The only way I can really recall full memories.
I can play it. If you can plug up something to my head and project an image, I could play you a movie.
But that went wrong in Black Mirror. You remember that episode?
But like,
watched it. They could
only play memories though. I'm talking I could create something.
Oh.
but it still would probably go bad.
My thing is like, are you consciously doing it, or is your subconscious helping? Because if my subconscious is helping, I cannot promise anything.
My subconscious is probably definitely helping.
Yeah,
but I can be pretty like conscious about it too. Cause like I mean I've done that my entire life. I remember being in class just like daydreaming. Like,
I would daydream books.
I would daydream just constantly.
I would literally be sitting there and I would be seeing like they'd be doing
things that I wanted to happen.
They'd be doing like math. I'd finish my math early because I loved math, and I would just be sitting there, and then I would literally just be reading a book in my head that I was making up at the time. And I used to just do it by like I would look around and like look at different people in the class and pick who were my face claims, and then create their characters, and then create the story. And I would just
that sounds really entertaining.
Yeah, that's what I used to do in school. That was me in school.
I love that. Looking back on it, I've realized that I really have like created everything in my life, in my reality, and I think I'm actually like a really powerful manifester.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I realize that too.
Realizing that like, and how to harness that energy and how to work with it, because if you don't truly understand manifesting and you're just looking at it in like a
logic
way
standpoint
that just kind of like makes you feel like you're crazy or seems like you're crazy, like I get that because I was there at one point. I was like, what the fuck are they talking about this shit?
I was like, if it was that easy, I wouldn't have been so
right.
depressed.
But there's ways to work with it, and it's just like the 3 buckets. There's the one you can control, influence, and you can't control. So it's the same.
And learn how to deal, like how to handle things you can't control better is the big thing.
Oh yeah.
And your perspective on it. It's like things were so shitty. Like I could go through the same situations now that I did in my most depressed state, and I promise I would not be anywhere where I was then because I would look at things totally different. And it's kind of like crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Because like you don't want to admit that like it was like for me, like it was hard because I didn't want to admit that the reason why I had got so depressed that I was going to kill myself was my own fault because I was focusing so heavily on the things that were making me so low. And
that's such a hard
It sucks because I was like, that's wrong. I was like, because it felt at first,
I
felt like I was invalidating my feelings. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying that, I'm just saying that like when you focus on it, of course you're gonna live in it because you can't control that happened, but if you can control how you react to it, right? So it's like I've been in situations shittier at this point in some ways than my most depressed state, and I've now looked back and I'm just like, wow, I handled this so good. Imagine if I would have handled those things that way. Where would I be right now? Right. Would have been a totally different life because I would have went about and that's that moment different. Where you realize and you choose. Yeah, it's like you can choose the next step. Like you might not, you can't choose you make everything. The next
right decision.
I feel like it's like, when like you're in one of those basic click games where like you click, they're like pick a path or open a door, and you click the door and then you don't get to choose what's in the door, you just get to choose which door. Right. That's what you do. You choose which path. You just don't know what's on the path you get there. Sometimes you make the wrong choice, sometimes you make the good choice. Yeah.
Sometimes you realize you don't want to be on that path. Yeah. And so you
try to find a little little side trail. Cut corners.
You just keep making the decisions, the right ones for yourself, and you will eventually find happiness. Lead yourself to happiness through your choices and
it's like
the way that you respond to things.
It's a hard journey.
Happiness is a choice.
Yeah. Happiness is a choice more than it is a feeling. And I tried to explain that to someone before because they were like, how are you so happy? And they were like, how are you always happy? And I was like, because happiness is a choice, not the feeling of happiness is fleeting. Every emotion is, but I am choosing to try to joy. Yeah. And I'm like, because I'm choosing to try to always do what I think will be the best for happy me. So it's like I'm always like trying to, if the thoughts keep like looping, I'm realizing I'm just spiraling in negative thoughts, I then try to pull myself out of it because if I want to be happy, I have to think happier. So I try to make myself think happier things. If I'm feeling a certain way and I've sat in it for too long, what things make me feel better? Let me try to do things and see if it helps any. Because usually it's the start that's the hardest.
All the last.
The start is the fucking hardest because it's the most resistant part. Once you start doing whatever it is that starts to make you feel just an inch better, you start to realize, oh,
it snowballs.
It's not gonna stay. I can do this thing, and all of a sudden it gets faster as you keep doing it, and you start learning more and more what makes you happy. And that's the thing, a lot of people don't know what makes them happy. They know what people say makes people happy,
right?
But there are things that make me happy. Like If I go to a restaurant right now and sit down and someone came up and said, you can get anything you want on this menu.
My heart would explode.
So alive. But I know plenty of people that like the idea of going and sitting down in a restaurant and like having whatever meal, like that doesn't make them happy. Like they don't have a joy attachment with food. I'm like, what?
No, I definitely do.
Yeah, I'm just like that
if
would make me so happy.
A really nice restaurant. I was like, oh,
yeah, it would just.
But you know what also makes me really happy? Walking around through like the woods or a forest or by a stream and looking at water and watching like the fish and the life.
I like talking to the trees.
I just genuinely love being out in nature and especially by any form of water. But streams especially, like little things that I can walk through.
I feel like streams would really hit for me. I never was one to go venture into the wooded area. I just like to go barefoot on the ground and talk to the trees. But I also always go up to the tree line, but I don't like to go into the trees.
I used to hang out in the woods a lot as a kid.
To be honest, unpacking, it probably is because we weren't like my parents didn't
allowed to go in the trees.
And it's the same woods. It's the same woods I always grew with. Fucking 26 going on 27 years. It's the same woods, and so I feel like that's what it is because they always talked about how like there were like poisonous snakes in there and creatures. You walked and
through the woods with us a couple of times on the trip.
And that I remember like the first time. It was so fucking hard, but I think it was for like it was like your birthday, and so we were walking in, and I remember like because I was on acid, I was aware that I was panicking, and I was like, "Why are you panicking?" And it was just like, cause I was like, "We're about to go in the woods," and I'm like, "Oh my god, we're gonna have to like walk on trees, and what if I fall? And what if there's a creature, and what if there isn't?"
And you crossed the bridge.
I was so scared. I'm telling you, I remember
that being a pivotal moment for you.
Because I was like, I can't do it. I literally cannot do it. And everyone was like, yeah, I do. And I was
the whole group on the other side hyping you up.
I was like, come on, grab my hand. I was so convinced that I was just gonna like fall or hurt myself. I don't know what I thought was gonna happen. And I was just so scared. And I was like, what the fuck? And yeah.
Didn't someone fall in one day? Maybe not. I don't know.
Not on that trip.
Not on that one, but I think someone did later on. But yeah, that was epic. I love the woods. So finding things that make you happy that are just like organic as fuck, or like you know, just like something you can do almost at any time.
Really. Yeah, literally. Like sometimes, you know what makes me happy? Making a random beat in my head or making weird sounds. Why not? Like you ever like you're just feeling really shitty and you're just sitting there like and you try to talk like that or just make weird sounds and trying to make sense of it. You start getting confused at what the fuck you're doing, and it really can like
you
really
make yourself laugh. You're like
act like a toddler. What are you doing when a toddler's crying? Are you trying to attract him? Do that. Because that's who's crying is your inner like child. So treat it like a child and tell you
that was liquid gold right there.
Yeah, like you can find other things that help, but for me, like that's the easiest go-to is like it's usually the simpler thing that you think of. Not everything is so complex. Most things are simple. We make them complex.
Yeah, I realized I can create dopamine with music.
Yeah,
that's very powerful because I'm like if I'm like unmotivated and I'm sitting on the couch and I'm trying to wake up and I put on a few good songs, I'm like.
Yeah, if I turn on music for a sushi restaurant for Harry Styles, I'm up. I'm getting it. Like if I would get at work and I walk in and Chef's like 10 shortcakes. Fuck that shit. Anyways, it's strawberry shortcake. I always gotta walk in and make so many of those fuckers. I literally would just go put my little earbud in. As soon as that song starts, I'm unstoppable.
Yep.
I'm unstoppable. Yep. And I'm like, wow, that's so crazy that like, cause see, what I realized is that I never realized I had a dopamine problem, but it was because I listened to music 24/7. When I stopped listening to music 24/7, all of a sudden I was like, why am I having dopamine problems as an adult? And I'm like, because you're not listening to music 24/7 and that gives you dopamine. It's so fucking weird.
It's such a funny thing. Literally. Such a weird realization.
Literally, like if you're struggling with dopamine, telling you make a playlist or listen to the playlist or whatever, like
songs that make you feel good and literally like raise your energy.
I was like the best thing if you're like really like struggling to get out of bed, I'll do is like turn on a song that just I know that's gonna make you have to get up and dance because everyone's got at least one song that when they hear it, they gotta move, they gotta wiggle.
Girl,
I got so many, but
so many.
I stem a
you
lot
turn
to
on
music.
Sweet Child of Mine, and I will put on a whole rock concert. Like I will.
That's fair.
Yep.
I have quite a few songs where I just, you gotta move. The stem comes through with music.
Oh, I signed up for guitar lessons again too.
This is what I get for fidgeting with something that's not a
I realized you do. I've been playing with it for a while. But I brought myself to the music shop that I used to go to as a teenager. Because I was talking with my friend and I picked up Slash's autobiography and I had never finished it. I started reading it.
Right, I remember you posted about when you finished it.
Right, and well, I'm still finishing it right now, but I felt this immense anxiety, loss, nostalgia, anger, like all of these horrible feelings. I was like, I cannot breathe right now. What the hell is happening? And I realized that my inner teen was so hurt that I didn't finish that book and that I stopped listening to Guns N' Roses and I stopped playing my guitar. Mm-hmm. And I also, when I went to the music shop that I used to go to, I was like, why did I stop coming here? I realized when Josh died. Oh, we used to go to that music shop together all the time and play guitar and jam, and like that was a memory we shared. We would ride our bikes there, me, him, and Marshall, and my brother. So going in there, like as soon as I opened the door, the smell hit me. I saw everything, and I just started crying. The owner came up to me, Randy. He never wears shoes. I've never seen him wear a pair of shoes in his life. He's like, "This is my establishment. Best shoes or no shoes." Yep. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just used to come here a lot, whatever." And he was like, let me ask you this. Do you need a hug? Like, yeah. And I love him. I was like, yeah.
I'm like, you indeedly right, sir.
And so he gave me a big hug, and then he just talked to me for a while. He let me know the guy that used to teach guitar lessons there that I did know died from cancer about a year ago. And he said a lot of his students will come and just sit up in the space that he used to teach in and just sit for a few minutes, kind of feel close to him. So I guess he's used to people coming in there
and just crying. Like crying.
Yeah.
He probably was like, oh, were you one of his students? No. Like, no, I was crying about something different.
I told him about Josh and everything, and he was like, oh yeah, okay. And I look very different from high school, so he probably didn't recognize me. But if I showed him a picture of me from high school, he'd be like, yeah. So, but I signed up for guitar lessons to go learn some advanced stuff because I taught myself mostly how to play. Like I took a few lessons to learn a couple things, but like I don't even know how to play scales. I just like would read the tabs online and learn how to play the songs exactly note for note. But I can't like make up my own music that well.
One time I decided I wanted to play guitar and my dad got me a guitar and he told me that if I learned a certain amount of chords that we could take it apart and paint it neon pink. So of course I was like, all right. I don't think it was that many chords. So I don't know if he was just really wanting me to play guitar or if he just didn't think that I would learn because it was literally like 4 chords. In hindsight, did you just want me to play guitar or did you not think I would fall through with that one? Because either one would make sense for him.
I don't know. 4 chords is hard. 4 chords of strumming, it's not that easy to learn.
Well, he taught me after that, we took the guitar apart, we sprayed it neon pink, he never put it back together. And I never touched the guitar again. Yeah. I was like,
do you have any desire to do that?
Brittany says she wants to learn again. I want to learn bass.
That would be cool.
I want to learn bass so bad. We could jam. I just gotta
get one. And then we could jam with Michael because he plays the drums.
Yeah, man. That would be so much fun. I'll get a bass and I'll learn it.
Cool. You can buy a cheap one for like $150.
I think I can buy a cheap one for cheaper than that at a pawn shop.
Yeah, definitely. No, you could actually go down to the music shop too and see if they have cheap ones.
That's why
support Randy. Support your local business owners.
Yeah, because I want to. What we was talking about. Like I said, I was back to thinking about
my realization of inner teen being mad at me for putting these things down. So like you can just have so many different realizations in so many different ways.
Yeah, we unpacked a few live today.
yeah, we did. And then we gave you guys a few examples so y'all, relate in any way, shape, or form. Follow those thought trains. Follow the subconscious thoughts that pop up in your head, and you go, "What?" When you hear them, you're
question yourself.
And ask yourself why. I was
Why do you
always
feel this way?
told
Why do I
not to
think
ask
this way?
why. My entire life, I was,
You don't
not
need to
allowed
know
to ask
why.
why. Yep, because it was just a parent was telling me, or authority figure, or whatever, or the church was
I was gonna
telling
say, or the
me.
church, they're like, you don't need to know why. God
Exactly.
knows why.
So I was never in the habit of asking why, and that was a question that I never even knew how to answer with a lot of things. When people would ask me why, I'd be like, I don't know. And then people would ask, like in jobs and in business when I was like working for Cutco, they would be like, what is your why? You have to have a strong why. And I never could find mine because I didn't know anything about myself. I never asked myself why. I never questioned anything. So I was just blindly following, and start asking yourself why if that sounds like you, because it'll probably change your life.
Literally, even in the simplest ways of like, let's say you're someone who, like struggles to like get yourself to like brush your teeth in the morning for some, and you're just say why, follow it. That was something like for me where I was like, why is it so hard for me to remember to brush my teeth as soon as I wake up? And for me, the answer was just like, because as soon as I wake up, it's a lot of stimulation in my mouth, and I need to wake up a little bit before I can handle all of that sensory. And I go, oh, because I've been beating myself up going, why can't you just remember to take care of yourself? And it was like, no, I do know I need to brush my teeth. A few minutes. I need to wake up. I can't brush my teeth as soon as I wake up, or I'm like, there's too many like sensories going on. Wow, I'm like, oh, okay, so sense. Even like that, like you don't always impact something that's like dark and traumatic. It's like you gotta like think. It depends on who wakes up. Yeah. So well, like, for me, it's like I sleep with my mouth open a lot, and so when I wake up, I hate the taste in my mouth, and I have to immediately brush my teeth. I'm like, that's fair. I like that after a drunk night.
It's even worse after a drunk night.
Drunk night's bad.
I'm like, my tongue is so dry, and just have to just brush everything.
Like a cat tongue.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh Lord.
All right, gang. Well, thanks for joining us, talking about the realizations, resistance, and ratchetness.
Hope you enjoyed or got something out of it.
Stay ratchet, JK.
Stay learning your ratchetness.
Yeah. Be aware of that. Be aware of
Be
it.
proud that you can recognize your ratchetness, because that shows that ratchetness isn't in you anymore.
Exactly.
Because if it was, you wouldn't
version
be.
Of you,
exactly.
And you're just processing that.
Be embarrassed of your past self, because that means you've grown.
Feel the remorse, process it, let it go, make yourself feel good.
Yup.
All right, guys. Have a good week.